Crash course, mirror and match. Mirror and matching, it sounds like it's kind of smoke and mirrors. Does it really work? Have you ever even heard of it before? So the first time I came across mirror matching, I was actually in one of Diana Kokoska's Bold classes, which was phenomenal. And they shared that the more that you reciprocate body movements, gestures of someone else, the more warmly it's going to be received. And I was like, that's phooey. There's just no practical way that actually works. Someone would first of all pick up on the fact right away that I'm mirror and matching their behaviors and totally throw it out the window. Well, they made us actually practice it and reciprocate it so many times that the very next time I went on a listening appointment, I actually tried it. The guy happened to be, he chewed on his glasses. He took off his glasses and kind of chewed on the tip. And I'm sitting there with him and his wife and I'm thinking, oh gosh, I can't do that. It's going to be totally embarrassing. In fact, they're completely going to pick up on what it is I'm doing. Well, here it goes anyways. So at the time I wore glasses, so I just took off my glasses and just started chewing on the edge of it. I'm starting to get all blushed and red, thinking this is just ridiculous. And I look over at the wife and then she just leaned in. And I had captured her full attention. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, this is awesome. I just learned some ninja type stuff. Come to find out, I took the listing. I got along really well with the man because he could really connect with me. And I got real along with his spouse because I was mirror matching the same body gestures as the person she loved the most in the world. And so since then, I've been instituting mirror and matching in every time my listing presentations, buyer's consults, agent interviews, you name it. It's just kind of subliminal something I do now. So what is mirror and matching? Well, this is actually a funny picture of a couple guys that are on our team. This is Andrew Kleskin and Andrew Thatcher. We are actually the three Drews between the three of us. And let me tell you, it was really confusing last year when our team name was Andy Taylor Holmes. In fact, all three of us would answer to Andy whenever it called. But we actually practice mirror and matching every day in our script practice from 8 to 8:15. It's not just the words we use, it's also the body language we have. Just so happens that these two Andrews are both bald, look awesome in Mr. Rogers sweater vests, and love Converse All-Star tennis shoes. So mirror and matching, how do you get into doing it and when's the most appropriate time? Before I get to the most appropriate time, let me show you the not most appropriate time to do some mirror and matching. So many of you know Rochelle Guerin, she's on our team. Her and I used to do a horrible, despicable, sadistic behavior. I don't even know why we kept it up for so as long as we did. Is that we would go door knocking on folks who had just been issued a notice of foreclosure. So people who were going to lose their house, there was a law that they had to be notified 120 days before they were evicted. So they would get this notice of foreclosure. They'd get told they're getting kicked out of their house. The very same day, Rochelle and I would show up and say, hi, we want to list your house short sale and help. Truth is, there was a lot of value to it. We could actually extend their stay. We could get them to stay in the house for an initial 7 to 8 months sometimes. We'd get a professional negotiator involved. And sometimes we could even get them funds to help them close. But the upshot of it was, they didn't care to hear that from a guy in a suit on the day they just were told they're going to be evicted. So all the more reason why we'd have to expertly emphasize mirror and matching. So my whole job was to get us into the kitchen table. If I could get them to open the door, talk to me for 28 seconds, I'd get them to the kitchen table, then Rochelle would come in and close the deal, get paperwork signed, and we'd go on our way. So oftentimes I'd leapfrog ahead of her and she'd come join me wherever we were. It was bared fruit for us. It was just exhausting, and I'm kind of glad those days are behind. This one time I go up to a house and Rochelle's with me at the time, and I knock on the door and this guy answers the door. He kind of sticks his head out and goes, hello? I'm like, oh geez, well, it kind of startled me. Well, I got a mirror and match, I should reciprocate. So I say, well sir, thank you for opening your door. As you know, you've been issued a notice of foreclosure and we can extend your stay from 5 months to possibly 8 and actually get you some money. Interested in hearing more? And this time he kind of steps out the door and slams it behind him, kind of like Kramer would from Seinfeld. It's like, yeah, tell me more about it. I'm like, wow, captive audience. All right. And so then I go on to do my whole spiel, and before I know it, since I'm an expert at reading body language, I see that he is approaching, getting closer and closer to me, fully engaged. In fact, we're totally going to take this listing. In fact, this is the first of many because I'm on a roll today. And I look out of the corner of my eye and I see that Rochelle is no longer standing on the porch. No, sweet little Rochelle, who has got my back and go anywhere with me, threw me under the bus. She was already back to the street, about 25 yards away, going, Andy, Andy. You see, at that point in time, when I'm making eye contact with Rochelle and I see what looks like pure and utter fear in her eyes, I realize, this guy's high on meth right now, isn't he? And I look back at his eyes and I see like the Bugs Bunny eyes going, ooh, and I just realized, well, this was a perfect mirror match of a meth addict. I look over his shoulder into the living room and just see it's just a den, a haven of just exactly what Hollywood makes out these meth labs to look like. I actually backed over the railing, jumped over, and the two of us ran to our car. So, cautionary tale. Use mirror and matching. Just be a little more aware of your surroundings when you do it. So let's just go into the 3 components to mirror matching. The first one I want you to see is posture. Now, the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about posture and mirror matching is you're thinking necessarily, well, I should mirror and match their posture. And the correct fact of the matter is, yes, you should, but it only goes so far. Let's just say, for instance, they're sitting, you're standing, or vice versa. How do you actually get to that mirror and match posture? Well, this is what I want you to think about. More of mirroring their posture, I need you to think about mirroring the posture they want you to adopt. Let's say that again because it sounds kind of confusing. More importantly than mirroring their exact posture right now, I want you to mirror the posture that they think you should be adopting. I feel like manners and common courtesy have kind of gone out the window with this recent generation. It's like crazy. You got 20-year-olds photobombing your pictures. Guys aren't opening the doors for ladies. It's just like there's so many lack of gentlemanly skills. And I think the interviewing process is one of them. You know, one of the things that we do at Mosaic is we're constantly interviewing agents, and it's amazing how many people show up in hats and t-shirts, slouched over on their phones, laid back. Just because I'm looking casual in an interview process when I'm looking to hire someone doesn't mean they should look casual. And the same goes for your job interview. If you are interviewing for a listing or a buyer's consultation with someone who's of a mature generation, I'm going to call it like the baby boomers and up, how would they have dressed? How would they have acted on a job interview? Because they know that's what you're on. So just because they open the door and cut off shorts and a t-shirt and maybe slouched doesn't mean that you should be. What do they think someone on a job interview should be dressed like? Does that make sense? And so I always sat prim and proper until I got a good lay of the land. When I was doing a buyer's consultation or a listing presentation with an elderly couple, in fact, one of the things I always used was, so my name's Andy Taylor, I'd always say, don't you want the sheriff listing your house? And they'd always laugh and it would maybe already be the joke and I would take the listing. But I would always sit prim and proper. I would sit just like I think they would want someone who's on a job interview to sit. And then as the interview went on, as we began to warm up to one another, then if they were leaning forward with elbows on the table, I would gradually get there as well. But I never just started off assuming, well, they're kicked back with the feet off the chair, I should be too. So be very aware, what kind of posture should you be adopting for that situation? Now, I've had appointments that I've gone on, so I was starting wearing some nicer clothes later on. I would walk in and I would see that they were really casual people. They're like high I people. They're all about the party. They're actually offering me a beer. The first thing I did was unbutton my collar of my shirt and roll my sleeves up. I then would begin to slouch or be comfortable, if you will, not necessarily to the extent that they were, but to the extent that I thought they would want a professional to be. Does that make sense? So posture, it's not just about mimicking them to the T. If they're leaning forward like this, then you should be too. Eventually you want to get to that spot. But to think about it, why are they doing that? Is it like a nervous twitch? Is it a tick? Well, if they have a nervous twitch and they're doing this, maybe they're drumming their face, you can just as easily mirror that by kind of just drumming on your hand. You want to adopt the persona that they have, but not necessarily to the iota. So again, with posture, if they're slouched, I would be a little bit more comfortable and relaxed. If they were prim and proper and straightforward the whole time on a 45-minute listing presentation, my first cue was they're either 20-year military vet or I haven't put them at ease yet. It was my goal to get them to relax their posture enough soonest. See, if you're a high I personality, and I'm going to use a high C as being that ultra-conservative, kind of like military rigid, the way to get them to relax is not to tell them more jokes. If anything, that's going to make them more at ease. The way to get them to relax is to get them to have confidence in your skill. You don't have confidence in your skill by being a sloucher. So I would just begin to mirror and match their tonality, their body language, the way they engage. You could almost just see it happening. The more prim and proper I got, the more relaxed that high C would get. And then I could gradually just kind of loosen up a little bit. So posture is the easiest one to adopt. The second one, really important also, is the gestures that you use. Oh my gosh, I can't help myself. I don't know what to do with my hands. They just go up. And sometimes I'm a handsy guy. I've been handsy by nature since day one, page one, rule one, paragraph one of my life. I talk with my hands. It is so hard. Sometimes I have to just kind of sit on them. I feel like a little kid when they go in a store sometimes. I just want to touch everything. Well, I'm a gestury person. This is perfect with your expressive people. People who are also handsy, they just want to give me hugs all the time because they just, hey, there's my brother. They just feel it. Well, you know what? Huge percent of the population is not handsy. In fact, when they see my hands, all they see is distraction. And so how is your gestures in relation to theirs? Do you even think about it? Especially if you are nervous, you're just going to go right to your default. You're going to go to your Twitch. You're going to go to whatever it is that makes you do your thing. The more nervous they see you being, the more just kind of offended or obscene they're going to be. They're going to be checking their watch. You'll pick up on that body language, and guess what? That's going to reciprocate to you. Even more gestures to kind of fill the air. No, you got to just kind of keep it reined in. So I'm not saying if you're a handsy, gestury person that you shouldn't be gestures. You just got to keep it in place. You've seen the movie Hitch, you know? Like your zone for dancing is right here. So if they're not handsy, if they're prim, proper, and reserved, I can't not be who I am. I am who I am, and I'm a handsy man. I just keep it here. I can still talk with my hands. I can use my fingers for pointing. I can enunciate my words. It's killing me softly and slowly, but I can do it within here. If you're not a handsy person, let's just say you're one of these guys. By the way, good luck selling a lot of real estate if you do this. If you're one of these guys who's just not handsy whatsoever, and your client is hugging, they're touching, they're pointing, they're expressing, they want you to share that same kind of exuberance and excitement. You don't have to become armpit McSweaty Henderson. You just also keep it within here. Just begin to use your hands for gestures. Just begin to point at things. Just keep it within range. Your gestures can play a huge part in helping you get business or keeping you from getting it. And last but not least, there is the words that we use. Some clients want an agent that thinks before they speak. There's an expression, the wisest man in the room is the one who speaks the least. It's true. Wouldn't you agree? Listen, it doesn't matter who you are or what your nature is. The words you say should really match theirs. The same thing goes. So when I get nervous, I want to talk fast. It just, I don't know. I just kind of turn into like a 12-year-old teenage girl who just got her first cell phone. Like when I'm nervous, it's going, oh, I just want to talk my way out of it. Do you know that the reason I'm nervous with a client is because we're not just vibing together, we're not just connecting. More often than not, the reason we're not connecting is because they're a slow verbal processor. They think, they measure their words. I get nervous, so I just start word vomiting. That puts them off. So what do? I word vomit all the more. If you're not connecting with a client or you don't feel like you're winning with them, I guarantee you it's because your tonality, your affect, the lack of you measuring your words before you say them is throwing you off. To someone who is a slow verbal processor, they love the fact that you are really thinking before you speak. So take a home blurb, for instance. Sounds like you have a genuine fear of being ripped off. Is that correct? Tell me about a past experience where that played out. Was that like on a car lot? I'm sorry that happened, guys. You know, I had a similar thing happen to me with Comcast recently. Before I knew it, I got off the phone paying twice as much for my cable bill, and I should still cancel it. That's why I think we should go back to the office and you and me, let's do a CMA together. When we do the CMA, if the number's pencil, we'll write it up. And if it doesn't, we'll walk away. And then we're going to spend the next 10 days, see if we can find something better. How's that sound? Just because you know what to say, just because the script kills, doesn't mean it's going to go over very well with a client if you're micro machine robot talking over them. The reason we practice scripts for 15 minutes every single day isn't because the scripts are new. It's because we forget that you must role model. You must model the posture. You must model the gestures and the verbal. This is probably one of the shortest classes we've had, but honestly, it's the greatest content for life. So your goal now, today, for the remainder of your time together, is to begin to mirror and match with your partner. You know, if you want to be exaggerated, if you're the partner and do some goofy hand movements, that would be great. Because you're going to think that you know the home blurbs, but the minute that you have to actually start mirror and matching the body language of someone else who's doing it, you're going to see those home blurbs went right out of your head because they really weren't committed to memory. If you're a handsy person, I want you to be aware of how these little dinosaur arms just creep up in conversation everywhere. If you're a fast talker, good Lord, do you need some help? One last little note about fast talkers. Do you know that because someone is a slow verbal processor does not mean they have anything less interesting to say? You know what it does mean though, is they're used to being shut down, cut off, and not sharing very often. Slow verbal processors sometimes need to be prompted. They need to be asked what their opinion is. So you have a client who's a slow verbal processor, they're okay with letting you talk. Doesn't mean they're listening to you, they're just processing internally. You're never going to find out what they really feel if when you ask them a question, you cut them off or finish their sentence for them. If you ask a client a question who looks like a slow verbal processor, be ready for a thoughtful and concise answer that you should actually have some substance to respond to. All right, guys, you've been given a lot of assignments to date. Before we go on to some of the next ones, it's imperative that to date you have all of our previous content caught up with, memorized. When we go into pleasure versus pain and some of the other ones, it won't even be worth your time if you currently don't know the scripts inside and out. So finish up with what your assigned homework is and get those nailed down. All right, bye.